Hi all, welcome to the Microsoft Community Connection, a forum dedicated for our awesome Teams phone community. So this is our fourth session this year, and if you joined us last time, you already know the format. It's a podcast-style conversation where we talk directly with the people who build and support Teams phone every day. I'm Margie, and I'll be leading today's conversation, with Wendy helping moderate and keeping an eye on the Q&A and the chat. Today we're diving into a very special topic that's received a lot of interest: Teams phone security and protection. We're joined by our amazing colleague, Maryam Ahmad, who knows the space inside and out. Maryam, do you want to give a quick intro of yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Excited to have all of you join us. I'm Maryam. I'm the principal PM, and I lead the team security space for calling, meeting, and devices.
Awesome. Thank you, Maryam. So before we dive into the specifics, I'd love to ground listeners into how you think about protection across teams overall. At a very high level, can you just speak to security and protection across teams?
Sure. So I think of security as a connected platform story across the different interface surfaces that we have: meetings, calling, chat, and devices. And one of the key things that we are driving towards is that it's not really about individual features, but more about bringing all of it together in terms of identity, behavior, and the different signals so that we can protect our users end to end. Also, as some of you might be aware, we are also heavily investing in Teams Premium, which provides advanced security functionality to our users. Overall, the shift that we are driving towards is that how can we make sure we surface relevant signals, guide our users, and help them make decisions real time?
I really love the idea that you mentioned, Miriam, of protection being connected across all these different surfaces, because the reality really is that a meeting experience feels very different from a live calling experience. While they have some similarities, they're also quite different. So when you compare those two specifically, how does the protection problem actually change in a meeting setting versus a calling setting?
That's a great call out that you are bringing up, and glad you brought it up. So, when we think about meetings, meetings are actually a lot more structured and policy driven, where the protections a lot of times can be configured ahead of the meeting. But when we think of calling, it's much more real time and can interrupt users as well. So users have to decide in the moment whether do they trust this particular interaction or not. So in just what I would say is calling protection is really about clear trust signals and real time guidance and not just configuration beforehand.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. And I think that the real-time pressure is really what makes this interesting because users don't really get the time to stop and analyze the situation. They don't get a chance to even think, they just have to act. So if we focus on that very first moment of user contact, what are the, maybe like trust signals users should actually look at for when they receive an external call?
Yep. I would break it down into three signals across identity, context, and behavior. And let me dive a little bit more into each one of those. When I mention identity, what I mean is, do I recognize or trust this person who's calling? In terms of context, does it make sense that I'm getting the call at this point in time? And what is the behavior? Is it the person who's calling me, like, are they putting any kind of pressure to act? Is there a sense of urgency? And when all of these three signals, when one takes them together, if any of these don't seem to work well and you think that something seems off, that is a great sign for you to slow down and treat the interaction as untrusted.
So identity, context, and behavior. I really love that framework. It's actually really intuitive, especially the idea that when those signals don't really align, users need to slow down. So are those the kind of scenarios customers are actively worried about today? Like, I know you probably talk to a lot of customers on a day-to-day basis. What are you hearing most often from them?
What a lot of the customers are bringing about are concerns with respect to spam, impersonation, whether it be with respect to domain spoofing or using some kind of synthetic media. External threats are a big piece of the puzzle as well, and lack of protection in real time interactions. Additionally, one key thing that customers I've heard in many of the conversations I've had is they're asking for better visibility and reporting at a tenant level as to what are their end users reporting, and then how can they take IT admins can go ahead and take actions based upon the reporting that the end users are doing. So those are some of the themes that I'm hearing across the board from our calling customers.
I want to take a hold on what you just mentioned around impersonation. I personally feel like that is so relevant today, and it's becoming a much bigger conversation recently, right? With, even AI coming into play and making these attacks sound even more convincing. How are you seeing that concern show up from customers today?
Yeah, I would say not specifically like to teams, but in general, from a point of view of what customers want to are just more apprehensive about or worried about what can happen in the future. In terms of what I'm hearing from real-time scenarios is that couple of things. One, for example, as I was earlier alluding to, that people are doing domain spoofing, that they might pretend to be from your specific tenant. The second thing, a scenario I heard was that people actually sometimes pretend that they are the CEO of that particular organization and they're calling. And I've also additionally heard asking people to make certain financial transactions. And unfortunately, in some cases, there have been people who have fallen prey and have gone ahead and made those sense of financial transactions. So AI-driven impersonation, where voice or identities can be impersonated, is something that I hear a lot from customers that they are very worried on that aspect.
Yeah, I can totally imagine how scary that can be as well. I mean, imagine getting a call from Satya Nadella thinking that it's him, but it really isn't, you know? So there are obviously a lot of growing concerns in that area. And I think that's what makes this fundamentally different now, because hearing a familiar voice naturally creates this level of trust. And these days, you can't tell the difference between what AI is versus what, a human being is. So why is impersonation in a calling scenario so much more harder for users to detect, maybe compared to like email or chat?
Yep. So it's more thinking about like how calling is actually very synchronous and it's very conversational. Like we are having a conversation right now. Versus in case of email, though, one can actually go ahead, pause, and really analyze the content of that email, think through it. Because, for example, in day to day, if I think from my own perspective, in case of email, I go ahead, look at the email when I have a little bit more time to dive into it and really go through all the contents. But sometimes when there is a call, I'm like, hey, I need to take this call. And that's why the recommendation that in case of calling, there is this time pressure, this tone that the people could be saying, like, hey, this is really urgent. And pressure tactics folks can be using that people might actually not be able to think very quickly and act without verifying. And that's where the distinction lies in calling versus email.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'd say generally what I feel here is that people are reacting emotionally and in real time rather than, analytically or proactively. So when users do fall into these situations, what are the most common mistakes that they make during a suspicious call?
The biggest mistake I see is them acting too quickly, sharing information or taking the action without really verifying the caller. That's why good protection isn't just about detection, it's also about the way we think about it as guiding the user real time about what actions can they take and how can they mitigate the situation.
Makes sense. And I think that naturally connects to something like report a call, for example, right? Because that's really about giving users an active role in the protection experience. Why was that such an important gap for the team to solve?
Yeah, that's a great segue and a great call out from you about reporting as to why it's so essential. Reporting is something I've been hearing across the board from a lot of customers that they really needed this capability in Teams, which we recently launched. And Report a Call gives the users a simple way to flag interactions that may feel suspicious or indicate that something is that Microsoft might have flagged is not really a concern. Historically, there hasn't been an easy way to capture feedback from real-time interactions like calling. And what this reporter call functionality gives the end users and the IT admins is two things. One, from an end user perspective, they can share what kind of threats they are seeing. That also helps us get a better view of what is the evolving threat landscape. Second is also over a period of time, it can also help their experience if there are certain threats that Microsoft is flagging and they're not really a concern and it is a trusted person on the other side of the call. So those are the kind of things that it really helps with from an end user perspective.
Yeah, especially in real-time communication where, interactions disappear so quickly and there's no way to kind of track that or have any type of record. So, I think it'd be interesting for our audience here if you can, really walk us through what it means to report a call or communication in Teams. What does that experience look like from both an end user perspective, but also from an admin experience?
Yeah, I think that's, can we go to that particular slide, Margie, and we can show that to make it more visual for our customers here. So overall, in terms of the end-to-end flow, the way it looks like is there are knobs that we provide to IT admin via a policy through which they can enable whether they want to give capability to a user group of users or to their tenant who can go ahead and report a call. So that's the first step. The second piece is once an end user has that capability, they go ahead and actually can, from the call history, report a particular call as a concern. Or, as I was saying earlier, if something that has been flagged by Microsoft is not a concern, they can go ahead and do that as well. So that's the overall from an end to end perspective as to how that comes together. And this is just showcasing as to, from an end user reporting perspective, how it all looks like that. As I was saying, in the call history, the user can go to next to the call that they got in within the ellipsis. They have this functionality of report a call through which they can go ahead and do the reporting. Yep. And then this key piece that I wanted to highlight is that in case of PSTN, where we do have the block a caller functionality as well, if they felt that that call was very suspicious and from an end user action perspective, they want to go ahead and take an action, then one couple of things I wanted to call out. One is in terms of they can provide an explanation in addition to what we are saying as a report reason that helps us understand a little bit better as to why they flagged it. And then they can additionally go ahead and block the caller as well. So instead of taking like two separate sets of action, they can all do it with the ease of this dialog box.
Thanks, Maryam. That's super helpful. And now everyone here can go and report a call next time there's something suspicious. So I'd say there's clearly this broader theme of helping organizations, build and build like trust and confidence in teams. Another area that I personally have, heard people often associate with secure communications is encryption, right? What does encryption mean specifically in the context of Teams calling?
Sure. So Teams, one thing I want to do clarify for our customers here is Teams does come with a basic layer of encryption. So there is already a pretty secure platform that we do provide with encryption. What we are going ahead with end-to-end encryption is it is designed for scenarios where privacy and confidentiality are especially important, ensuring that only participants in the call can access the content of the conversation. So as we think about E2EE, the way I like to think about it is that it is providing our customers with stronger privacy protections for truly sensitive discussions. Also, one call out, which I'm hoping all of you will be very happy to hear, is end-to-end encryption for one-on-one calls is actually part of our basic Teams phone licensing. It is not behind premium. And as Margie has it up on the slide over here, end users can actually go ahead and enable end-to-end encryption through their settings within the privacy tab. For a call to be truly end-to-end encrypted, both set of participants, the person who's calling and the person receiving, need to have this functionality turned on.
Wait, did you say end-to-end encryption is for free for calling, but part of Teams Premium for meetings?
That's right.
Who wouldn't want advanced protection for free? So I think everyone here can go ahead and turn on end-to-end encryption for calls when it's necessary. And I think that brings me to another point that I wanted to discuss, Maryam. What are some of these scenarios where people would want to turn on end-to-end encryption? What are the types of interactions where this is especially important?
Yep. So for end-to-end encryption is when I think about end-to-end encryption, I'm thinking about the real-world scenarios where this is highly applicable. For me, it is a closed door conversation that is actually happening. That's what we are trying to replicate with end-to-end encryption for calls. And so it is truly for very highly sensitive meetings. In case of, from a scenario perspective, one can think of calls with execs, legal teams, or there is certain handling of regulated data. And this provides an added level of confidence that only the participants in the call can access that content. So the way I would think about it is very helpful for highly sensitive scenarios and not necessarily a default for every call.
Yeah, and that level of privacy obviously becomes especially important in those scenarios, right? But stronger privacy protections also usually come with some trade-offs in functionality. You mentioned that even Microsoft can't intercept in these calls when it's end-to-end encrypted. So how should customers or users think about balancing end-to-end encryption with the broader calling experience? Because obviously there must be some limited functionality there as well.
Yep, I'm glad you brought this up because this is something I've heard from customers too as to why do we not have recording or why do we not have transcription available in an end-to-end call. And so I'm really glad you brought it up to get that clarity across the board. So end-to-end encryption is truly about maximizing privacy, and that comes with trade-offs by the very nature of the functionality, in which, as you were mentioning, that Microsoft does not intercept between the caller and the callee. And because of that, the Microsoft provided services are disabled. So that which includes recording or transcription, which depends on server-side functionality, and therefore it's not available in those scenarios. So customers typically think about it as a targeted control, using it for more sensitive conversations and relying on standard calling capabilities when they want a richer experience.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I'm so glad that you actually called it out because a lot of people may not know, what functionality is limited. And this really helps because there are those niche scenarios where you wouldn't want recording or transcription, and so on and so forth. So, Maryam, you talked about a few different things today: trust, reporting, encryption. When you take a step back and look at all of this together, how should our Teams Phone customers think about all of it together as part of the calling experience?
These are all complementary layers. There are trust signals, which helps users to decide. Reporting strengthens the system overall. As I was earlier mentioning, reporting helps with getting a view also of the kind of threats that are emerging. So that's very critical, especially in the AI world that we all are living and breathing in. And then encryption provides the interaction in terms for highly sensitive scenarios. That's where enhanced end-to-end encryption is where it's very helpful. So to me, all of these actually come together to provide a complete protection model.
Yeah, all of those layers together really come together, and I think that makes sense. So, looking ahead, how does the protection story evolve as, AI becomes more embedded in the communication experiences and even within teams?
Yep, that is something that I've been thinking a lot about. As I was just mentioning, given the AI world that we are in, it opens a lot of opportunities, but it also comes up with new types of threats that have not been seen before. But the positive is it also comes with new ways to protect against them as well. So AI has both, it can be really misused, but it can also be really put to good use to protect our users. So what's evolving from the team side is in terms of one kind of thinking through like what are the different kind of threats that what our customers have mentioned when it comes to synthetic media, for example. That's something I've heard from customers. And impersonation, that also comes alongside with how can we make sure we surface relevant signals in real time and guide our users so that they can better understand what's happening and make informed decisions during an interaction and don't feel panicked. One thing that I would also love to actually talk a little bit about is in terms of the good uses of AI is the intelligent call delegation that we are working on. And that is something which can help with spam filtering. One of the things that we have been hearing from customers is that it has resonated really well. It's very effective with the robocall functionality. So that is something I would give a plug out to everybody over here. Should absolutely go ahead and try that out because it seems very powerful, and definitely security is one of the key things as a skill that it provides.
Yeah, I can attest to this. I've used intelligent call delegation and I love it. So if you're in Frontier and you're able to test it, go ahead and do so. And if not, it'll be coming to you very soon. Thanks, Maryam. And what should customers expect going forward in terms of how protection will evolve in Teams calling? Like, roadmap wise or just going forward, what should be the expectation here?
Customers can expect a shift towards a more integrated and proactive protection model where signals are connected across experiences and protections happen in real time, making sure that the experience doesn't seem as siloed or fragmented across our different modalities is something we are thinking a lot about. And also, how we provide real time protection to our users is the second key thing. What I would say is the goal that we have at Teams is to make sure that Team continues to be the most secure platform for our users and to make security stronger, simpler, and more automatic for our users so that they can just not worry about it and work peacefully.
Thank you, Maryam. Those were, about the only questions I had, but now I would love to open up the floor if there's any questions from the audience as well. So feel free, folks, to add your questions in the chat, or if you can raise your hand, we can go through the raised hands as well.
I noticed, Troy, you're typing. If you want to come off mute, feel free to do that as well.
Oh, you cannot unmute. Let me unmute you 1 second, Troy. Oh, you may need to just ask the question in the chat. Looks like this is blocked for us right now.
Can you try
Oh,
again, Troy?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can try it now because you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yep.
There we go.
Awesome.
Hello, ladies. Thank you for this. What I was going to say is we have created basically an auto attendant that when we get spam calls from irate people that are asking and telling us, why are we calling them, that has ended up allowing our users to transfer calls to this auto attendant, which is then reading out a carefully crafted explanation of what's happening and why they receive these calls. Is there anything, else in the pipeline other than, some using some AI integrations that we can help with this? We've looked into call branding. That comes at a cost, and it's only good for mobile phones. In our industry, we rely a lot on landline to landline type of calls. Just looking for any more semblance of reducing these as possible, these types of calls.
Maybe can you elaborate a little bit more, like which kind of calls you are referring to? And then a little bit more context would be helpful. Are you referring to spam or?
Yes. So in the case of where, someone's number that is, let's say, a legitimate number is being, spoofed. So we don't know who the actual caller is. So it's a
Mhm.
local number to, say, one of our local offices that calls like 100 people. And then, say, 50 of those people then return those calls back to our agents. And they're just, both parties are ultimately confused and trying to figure this out. And instead of blocking these numbers that could be potential customers at a carrier level, we don't want to do that. And there's no, if they, insinuate violence, then yes, we block those. But if they're not, trying to find alternative methods for blocking these calls as they get through, say, auto attendants or through call queues, because individuals can block calls and report calls direct, but if a call gets through an auto attendant or a call queue, the call blocking does not seem to function properly. And so trying to find better alternative methods so we can help our staff deal with these types of calls more effectively.
Got it. So to me, it seems like, thank you for bringing that up. It is something we have looked at it internally too, that in case of call queues, the blocking functionality and its availability. So that is something I would definitely be bubbling up again internally as to providing that piece of functionality and that it works well. The other piece I wanted to highlight, and let me know if that would be helpful, is we are also hearing from a lot of customers about how we can actually have tenant admins take certain set of actions based upon what end users are seeing. So one of the things one of the customers, for example, mentioned is like, hey, if within a tenant, so many threshold, like this number of calls are being reported as a bad number or a spam number, there should be a control for IT admin potentially that they can go ahead and block at a tenant level. Do you think something like that would be helpful?
I do, as well as having the ability to, if I know that I can take a block of numbers for an office and say run that through PowerShell into Teams to be able to preemptively block that number from calling that office, or having a tool set that can do that would be beneficial, especially on a rotating set of terms, because as we see these calls, a bank of callers might be, say, I don't want to use the word attacking, but calling a specific office location numerous times for a week, and then it moves on to another bank of calls. Each week it's random offices and random banks of calls. So being able to, say, block these numbers temporarily, 30-ish
Mhm.
days is kind of what we're seeing. Like, after 2 weeks, the calls seem to die down from one set of numbers and then just roll over to another set. So it's you're never going after the same number twice. And that's what really makes this difficult, is the constant rotation. It's no one can keep their head above water on this. Does that
Yep.
make sense?
It does make sense. Basically, today is this number, but tomorrow it might be a different number. So it might be more about looking through call patterns potentially as to what those are and thinking through how we can preempt, not just based on history, what numbers have been bad, but what can potentially be bad, even if it's a new number.
Right. And we have roughly like 15,000 active numbers, and trying to pin down what's good and what's bad. And then also these can possibly be potential, customers in our line of work.
Mhm.
So we don't want to block these people and possibly have a loss of revenue for somebody else doing nefarious actions that end up coming into our tenant.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think that is great feedback. Definitely something we would be looking into as to how we can protect. One thing I would mention is that we have also invested in is sometimes these concerns are also more from external users, for example. So in our call toast that users see when they're receiving a call, we have highlighted, hey, this is an external call. It's just like the first step. It's not where we're going to end. We're going to incorporate, like what you're mentioning is definitely something we're going to think through deeply and look into. But maybe I just wanted to also give a plug for that piece, that when there are external callers, we have that indication, so that users at least know that, hey, this is an external caller, maybe the threat level could be potentially higher. But I take your feedback, Troy. I think it's very well said in terms of the feedback. So I'll definitely be taking it back to the team and thinking through it.
And our SecOps team, I put in the chat, has created Sentinel rules that are basically sending us, tickets through ITSM going, hey, we see these numbers that are calling this, this set of numbers, more than X amount throughout the day. Please block them at the carrier level. And as much as, we can do that, we're also shooting ourselves in the foot because, again, potential customers, not somebody's fault, and trying to separate the wheat from the chaff in this is just the most infuriating thing.
Yep. I hear your feedback and definitely empathize with that as well. So definitely food for thought for us to think. We're already thinking for some of the things that you have mentioned, but I understand the importance of the work.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then we could start to just wrap it up. I just want to, really encourage the audience here to take advantage of the resources and opportunities available through Microsoft Community Connection. And here are some of the benefits that you have, and some of the resources that you can also refer to. And we always share these decks after the webinar as well. Please follow us on YouTube. Subscribe today. This recording will go up by the end of the week. And, just want to say thank you for, participating and for attending the webinar. And then, of course, thank you to Maryam as well as our guest speaker. I know this session was extremely interesting for me and hoping that it was just as valuable and helpful for the audience here. And then, of course, thanks, Maryam. Not Maryam, sorry. Thank you, Wendy, for also doing everything that you were doing in the back end and also, fielding the chat and questions.
Yep. Thank you so much, everyone. Great
Thank
talking to
you.
you all. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.